After several years of trial and error, I finally have the perfect crocheted coaster pattern. Hello everybody, this is Deb from Just Do Something Homestead, and today we're going to make coasters. In our home, we do use coasters. That's because most of our furniture in the living room is actually very nice furniture that we don't want ruined by water rings. But I've never been very happy with the patterns I found to make crocheted coasters. And that's because they're simply made out of yarn. If you take a glass and you put it on there that has condensation, it's going to soak into your coaster, which is going to soak into your wooden furniture. So I knew there had to be something better I could use. From the very start, I considered using the magic pot holder pattern, and I thought that would be perfect. It is twice as thick. But my first ones were failures because, in fact, the wet glass soaked not only into that first layer, but also into the second layer, and I didn't fix the problem from the start. Suddenly I thought, I could make a smaller version of that pot holder and put in a ceramic tile. That would work. So I went to my local Lowe's, and what I discovered is they don't sell them in Lowe's anymore. I distinctly remember you could purchase these for crafts, and they were fairly cheap, but no longer. That research led me to Amazon, and that is where I found success. I purchased 50 4-inch ceramic tile coasters with cork backing pads for $35, and that comes to just 70 cents each. The next step was figuring out the pattern. So today I'm going to share this pattern for free and show you how to make these coasters. First, you're going to need the tiles. Now, if you can find them in a local hardware store, I would suggest going there, but honestly, it was so much easier just to order them and have them delivered for free. The benefit to buying a package deal is that I did use the cork that goes on the back. It is already sticky. You just peel it and stick it on. At first, I didn't think that I would need it, but it gives it a much finer, clean look. You're going to want some yarn. I always use 100% cotton. This is Sugar and Cream that I got from Joanne Fabrics. I have also used Peaches and Cream from Walmart. We'll talk a little bit more about yarn in a minute. This project uses 2 hooks. The first one is an F or a size 5. That is a 3.75 millimeter. For the bulk of it, you're going to use an H, which is a size 8, and that is 5.00 millimeter. Find a good pair of scissors. You're also going to need a yarn needle that has a large eye on it. The end is dull. That means you're not going to poke yourself. And since I do intend to sell mine this summer at the farmer's market, I made some labels that said handmade coasters, 100% cotton yarn, and I just tied them together for now with some twine. I may upgrade that later, but this is what I had. If you have ever crocheted the magic square, you know in fact it's not perfectly square. And I face all of those issues on a smaller scale to do these coasters. And what I discovered is if you use a multicolored yarn, it's going to look straighter. I know that sounds awkward, but it's the truth. Let me show you the difference. Even though the solid colored one is straight on the top and straight on the bottom, you've got some curve going on here and down here. And I discovered it's really hard to make a solid color one look good. In fact, at first I was only using solid colors and I'm like, this is just not going to work. But something odd happened. When I started using multicolored skeins, you didn't see that curve anymore. So if you have a bunch of yarn that is a solid color, I suggest putting it in stripes with some of your leftover multicolored, such as this one. This one had a speck of color in the bulk of it, and then I added just a little bit of solid, and that alone made the stitches straight. I like to make my coasters in groups of 4, and then I might have another set of 4. So if someone wants to purchase 2 sets, then they have 8. But I don't typically sell them as individual. If you're buying these big, they're calling them supersize Sugar and Cream, you should be able to make 4 out of that pack. But if you're using these smaller ones of Peaches and Cream, they only make 2. To start this project, you're going to start with your smaller hook, which is an F. And so I'm going to do a slip knot by holding it under my fingers, wrapping it around. Then I take that hook and I go under and over and pull it back. And the reason you start with a smaller hook is you want that first chain to be tight. If not, you're going to see that seam all across your coaster. The next step is to chain 21. Now I am going to be yarning under for all this project. Yarn under is going to give you a tighter stitch, and that's what you want for these coasters. So I am going to chain 21. And let me point this out. This first chain, when you straighten it out, should be 4 3/4 inches long from where it begins to where that last stitch is. Even though all of the yarns that I use are the same size. Let me show you one of these. Let's see, right here, it is medium 4. Even though all of them are a medium 4, every one is slightly different in its thickness. And what I discovered is it's going to take measuring more than counting to get these to fit right. And here's an example of exactly what I'm talking about. These are the same size yarn. They're even the same brand. But for some reason, this one was much thinner than that one. And because of that, you can see on the coaster, this one's far thicker. It's even longer. Look at that. So you're going to have to measure more than you're going to count with this pattern. Now, before you do anything else, you're going to put that smaller hook aside and grab your large one, which is an H. And from this point on, you're going to use the H hook. In the second loop from your hook, you're going to insert the hook, yarn under, and do a single crochet. And this first one is different than the others in that same loop, add a second one. So what you have is 2 single crochets in that first loop. Now going across, put 1 in each one the whole way across. Because your chain was smaller with a smaller hook right from the start, this is going to do a little loop-de-loop kind of thing. That is fine. There's no problem whatsoever because we are just going to go in circles around it. We ended the row with a single crochet in that last loop. And watch this. We're going to actually, instead of turn, most times when you hear turn, you're turning it and going back over your work. This is different. We're doing it in the round. And so I am going to rotate. So the chain is now on the top. Now that little tail, I just need to move him out. And I'm going to find the loop that I just finished with. This is the same loop that single crochet was in on the last row. And I'm going to go back in it. It's tight. You can do it. Wiggle it around. Get it in there and put 2 single crochets. So there's the first one and 2. And what you've successfully done is put 2 single crochets on one end and now 2 single crochets on the other end. Now continue in this direction on the back loop of that chain, and you're just putting 1 single crochet in each stitch. And I just keep dropping these stitches today. Pull it on through, go to the next one, and it's tight. It's supposed to be tight. Pull it through and through. All right, so put 1 in each stitch going across, and I'll meet you at the other end. I just finished with the last single crochet and the last loop on that chain, and I'm going to go around the circle, and now I'm looking for both loops that form like that sideways V, and that'll be my next stitch. And eventually it's going to start curling on the ends. That's exactly what you want. Just keep going around. You had one there, put 1 here. Remember to yarn under and keep going. That's it. So I know this thread only because, or this yarn, only because I've used it so many times that it's going to be about 13 rows. And when you count these rows, you're counting from the center, from that chain. So right now, there's the chain is this part here. So I know I am now on my second row. So I'm going to go about 13 rows up, and I'll meet you back here and we'll see what it looks like. Here is what 13 rows looks like. It's an angled rectangle sewn on 3 sides and open at the top. And what makes this pattern so easy, but yet so complicated, is that it's in the round. And that simply means that if you're looking at the top, you're going around and around. That also means that your pattern is not straight up and down. Each one of these starts to go further and further at an angle. So it's actually going this way. And that's why it's not perfectly square when you're trying to make something that is perfectly square. If we were to look at the measurements right now, we should be at 5 inches across the bottom and 5.5 inches across the top. Now, what we are doing is bringing this in. So you're going to fold it in. And this point right here, where I just ended crocheting, is actually going to end up being on the end of the stitch that we put in. So you don't want to end on what you think would be here. Right here, you'd think, well, we should cut it off right here. No, you're actually going to be halfway between here and here. So I can tell I have like an extra stitch in there I'm not going to need, so I'm going to pull that out. But what I'm going to do is open this up and try to flatten it out. Now, you can see that that is not a perfect square. We need to now insert the ceramic tile. And because this is not a perfect square, what we need to do in the end is to make it a little tighter so that it stretches and becomes a square. One way I do this is to make sure each of the corners is tucked in. Then I pull this up and I'm going to push that point. That's the point that needs to go there, and then flip it down. All right, now get it all straight. And what I want to see is a gap between the two. I don't want them touching yet. All right. Yep. And if you can pull it, which I can, then it is tight enough and I can start stitching the center. There we go. That's what you should have. This last stitch that I put in, which was on that straight side, is now on a corner where I am going to stitch this closed. And actually, I don't want a single crochet there. So I'm going to give it a little tug and pull out just one stitch, just like that, and then put the yarn back on my hook. That's because this stitch needs to be a slip stitch. So I'm just going to put it back in. And yes, I have that ceramic tile under it. It's okay. Grab the yarn and now just pull it right through, just like that. To measure how much yarn I need to stitch it shut, I've learned this little formula. I pull the yarn down, and then I do 2, and then I do 3. So 3 lengths of the diagonal is long enough to have your yarn, and then you can just cut it off. I still have that last loop on my hook from that slip stitch, and I'm going to pull all the yarn through it and give it a tug, tighten it up. Now I can put the yarn onto my needle. And I like to turn this so the opening is up at the top, and I like to go down this way. So what you're going to see here, this is the slip stitch we just put in. I want to always use the outside loop. So that's an outside loop. I want to go over that slip knot we just had. We were already using that one, and go into the next one. All right, now that knot is down in there, and from this point on, it's just easy going back and forth. Take the outside loop and the outside loop and pull it through, and I don't even tighten it right away. I think it's easier if I don't tighten it to find that next one. Just keep going back and forth. Only the outside loop and the outside loop. And when I have a few, like there, then I give it a tug and tighten it all up. There you go. All right, so I'm going to continue until I get to the end. I am now at the very last stitch, and so I'm going to pull that tight. And for me, I like to bring it down a little bit. But what I'm going to do is put a knot in, but not just tie a knot or it'll come right through. I need to take some of these loops with it. So put the needle under, put it through there, and give it a tug. And I still like a little added security, so I put another knot on top. Put the needle in the center. That will pull the knot down towards the other knot. That's why I don't like plastic needles. These are much stronger. I've done that in the past and broke the needle right off. Then insert the needle anywhere in there, bring it up, and what you're doing is you're hiding that string. Give it a tug and cut off the tail. This is the back side. There's the seam that we just enclosed. So on this side, I now want to straighten up the stitches because, as I told you, this is in the round. You're not going to have it perfectly straight. But this side, you can have this line straight, and then you can get the bottom row straight. So you can tell this one is hanging down too low, so I like to pull it up on the side and push that down and just straighten these up by moving the stitches over a little. Again, pull up this side a little bit and push this one over. All right. Now, the back side is where you're going to put your adhesive cork. Since this is sticky on one side, you want to make sure you line it up really well before you push it down. And I like that. It's just an added barrier. So if I was to put my drink on here, it might soak into the yarn, but it's going to hit the ceramic. If it soaks so much, maybe you have a spill that it goes down and around, now it hits the cork. And this one was the fourth coaster that I needed for my set of 4. As you saw, they're very easy to do, and it takes me about a half hour, or maybe a little bit more to sew it shut. So I'd say about 40 minutes at the very tops to make one of these coasters. When I do my videos, I always like to add some tips or some finds that I was able to discover. This is one of them. I have suggested many times not to waste your money in a real expensive crocheted bag. Instead, I get a garden tote. They had many patterns to choose from. I really like the sunflowers, but I got this at my $1.25 tree. It used to be Dollar Tree. My store has items that are $5 as well as $1.25. The reason I like them, first off, they're inexpensive. Second off, I can fit a lot in here. I already have some yarn in there. These open up as well. So you have 3 different areas that you can snap shut. And you know what? You could actually even thread your yarn through here and it wouldn't get all tangled up. So for $5, this was an excellent find I just got this weekend. If you enjoyed this video on the perfect coaster pattern, then please like, subscribe, and share. Have a blessed day, everybody. Bye-bye. And as we finish up this video, I have one favor to ask you. If you're enjoying these videos that I create, most of them with original patterns, please subscribe. Only about 5% of the viewers actually become subscribers. We would love to have you join our family. Thank you.